Pan American Mid-Ocean Air Base number 2, Midway Island, standing by for orders. Pan American Airways Mid-Ocean Air Base number 3, Wake Island, standing by for orders. Pan American Airways Mid-Ocean Air Base number 4, Guam, standing by for orders. Pan American Airways Trans-Pacific Air Terminal, Manila, Philippine Commonwealth. Ready and standing by, sir.
I have the honor to report, sir, that the Trans-Pacific Airway is ready to inaugurate the first mail service to the United States Post Office from the mainland across the Pacific to the Philippines by way of Hawaii, Midway, Wake, and Guam Islands.
The giant airplane that would dare to take this dangerous mission was the Martin M130. It was designed specifically to carry a heavy load across the vast, open stretches of the Pacific Ocean. The M130 was the largest American airplane ever built, 91 feet long, with wings that spanned 130 feet. A streamlined mass of shining silver and black, a reporter wrote, a fantasy craft, a magic carpet. Christened the China Clipper, she was destined for adventure.
And the first of the new-built Clippers waiting at her slip in San Francisco. A few brief moments of contrast. A pioneer of one age bidding Godspeed to the vanguard of another. A few moments for mail, for messages of goodwill bound halfway around the world.
25,000 people jammed the waterfront to witness the takeoff. President Roosevelt sent a message through the Postmaster General.
Even at this distance, I thrill to the wonder of it all.
No one knew better than Pan Am founder Juan Trippe the potential for disaster. 2 of his board members had resigned to protest the danger of this mission.
Captain Music, you have your sailing orders.
At 3:46 p.m., Captain Edwin Music opened the master throttles wide. And each of 4 engines pumped out 830 horsepower. The China Clipper headed into a northwest wind toward the Bay Bridge. Cameras recorded the moment, and ships blew their whistles in salute as the flying boat raced past. An eyewitness told of a mile-long trail of foam. The China Clipper strained under the weight of the fuel and cargo, but finally she lifted off the water. She was headed straight for the unfinished bridge, and though the captain tried, she couldn't climb high enough. At the last moment, Music nosed her down and passed under the bridge.
And all the escort planes thought that that was part of the act, and they just followed them right under it. And one of our vice presidents, John Leslie, said that's the day his hair turned gray, because they didn't know what was going to happen when they saw that go under instead of over.
Captain Music kept her low, flying over the San Francisco waterfront, where thousands of people on rooftops waved her on. Up and over the unfinished Golden Gate Bridge, the China Clipper headed west. 7 minutes after takeoff, she left land behind.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude this broadcast of the inauguration of Pan American Airlines' first official Trans-Pacific Air Mail service.
1,352 miles out of San Francisco. The Clipper is bucking strong headwinds and approaching predicted storm front.
The crew pressed on across the longest stretch of open water in the world. This trip to Hawaii had already claimed the lives of 13 aviators before them. But Pan Am had its most experienced pilot, Captain Edwin Music, at the controls.
He taught himself to fly. It was obvious that he was a born pilot, and they used to call him the jeweler because he polished the parts and was so meticulous about everything.
The flight navigator was Fred Noonan.
You were supposed to take a regular rest period, and he didn't take them because he was so intent on what he was doing. He didn't even want to eat. Finally, they shoved a meal right on top of all his maps and everything. He was taking constant readings.
There was no radar then and no voice communication. 7 times during the night, Noonan climbed out a hatch to take star sightings with a sextant.
It was tense. Every minute of it was tense. The navigators were watching never taking their eye off the instrument panels.
Delayed by strong headwinds, they flew continuously for 21 hours. Finally, they reached their first refueling stop, Pan Am Ocean Air Base No. 1, Pearl Harbor. Juan Trippe founded Pan Am in 1927, a determined man with a grand dream. He was inspired by the clipper ships of a century before, but even the fastest Pacific crossings now took 21 days. Trippe believed in airplanes and knew that opening air routes to Asia would bring power and prestige to Pan Am and the United States. International tourism could bring world peace. Realizing this dream was a monumental undertaking.
Ahead into the Pacific went an army of young Americans to build air bases thousands of miles apart across a trio of almost unknown dots on the ocean's map.
The islands were supplied with everything they'd need to be transformed into air bases.
Food, fuel, lumber, pipe, all the necessities of a modern community poured forth onto pounding barges.
Wake Island posed the greatest challenge. It was completely uninhabited. Everything from housing to communication towers was built. Coral heads were blasted out of the lagoon to make a safe landing area for the flying boats. John Borger was a young Pan Am employee.
We had to have 6 feet of clearance from the surface of the water so that the airplane hull wouldn't hit them. Our friend Bill Malahy did all the diving, and he first used to go down and look over the coral head and see where he was going to put the dynamite. And when we got out all the wire, why, we'd twist the magneto and blow the head.
The trip from Midway to Wake Island was the shortest but most difficult leg of the journey. Getting to Wake, the captain's log reported, was like throwing a thread through the eye of a needle from across a room.
Hawaii was big. To find Wake was the big accomplishment. It was only 3.5 miles long and 1 mile wide and flat. You couldn't see it until you were over it. You know, and if you bent over to pick a piece of paper up off the floor, you'd miss it.
But the clipper landed 5 minutes ahead of schedule, her keel cutting through the clear water of the Wake Island Lagoon.
These were ships of the sky. There was a certain beauty of one of these aircraft landing on the sea. You watch them come in, they're just like a giant bird settling on the water that conjured up just unbelievably wonderful images for the American public and for people to dream that they were on it and going off to foreign lands.
Thousands of people gathered at Manila Bay to greet the China Clipper when she arrived from Guam. No one had ever flown this last leg of the trip before.
They had escort planes overhead to go out and meet them and guide them in. When they landed in Manila, of course, the harbor was filled with boats.
The mail was delivered. Music and the crew were international heroes.
The reporters asked Music to give them a report on the flight, and he was very shy and everything, and he just got up to the microphone and he said, "Without incident," and he walked away. That was all he had to say, you know.
The next year, the China Clipper carried passengers. A trip to Asia was thought to be the height of adventure and luxury. Juan Trippe's wife Betty was on the first voyage. She and others traveled by ship to board the China Clipper in Hawaii.
They made arrangements for the China Clipper to fly over the ship, and Mrs. Trippe was taking her movies. And tears pouring down her face. She was so happy that the dream came true.
one for me. West wind whispered to her tenderly, ooh, of the love that used to be. She has gone to find adventure, restless feet must roam. Tell her love's the best adventure, and she'll find love waiting at home. The west wind will go wherever she may be. Ooh, send my loved one back to me.
China Clipper navigator Fred Noonan vanished mysteriously with Amelia Earhart on a trans-Pacific flight in 1937. Captain Edward Musick died in a mid-air explosion in 1938. He was on a survey flight in the South Pacific headed for New Zealand. The China Clipper had a distinguished career. She flew 15,000 hours in her lifetime, including secret missions during World War II. Juan Trippe was 35 years old when he launched the China Clipper. He was a pioneer and patriot who built Pan American into a global airline, often working closely with the United States government. When he retired in 1968, Pan Am was the world's largest international carrier.